All right, so yeah, again, welcome everyone. My name is Dan Caesar. So I manage Bluehill Universal software, Bluehill Central software, Bluehill Automation software, which is our new automation platform. Um, and today we are here to talk about Windows 10 obsolescence, how to get ready for Windows 11. What I do want to start with is that this session is specific to are static universal testing systems. So in those software applications that if you have other Instron equipment or dynamic equipment or fatigue equipment, our Chaos rheology equipment, that over the last couple of weeks we've had a equivalent session that goes through how to prepare to move to Windows 11 for those systems, and they've been posted up to YouTube. So certainly, if you have Bluehill Universal or other static software, this session's great. Listen in, but be sure to, if you have other equipment, certainly go onto our YouTube page to learn more about those systems there. So just a quick agenda today. We're going to do four things. We're gonna start with talking about Windows 10 and its obsolescence by Microsoft. Second, we are going to talk about how to properly prepare your lab and your Instron equipment to be ready for the transition to Windows 11. And then I want to take some of this time to also introduce some of the more notable new features that we've released in Bluehill Universal in recent years. Certainly, if you are updating through the need for Windows support, I just wanted to give you a heads up on some of the features you can look forward to. And then, as Nick said, we can get to any questions you have. So again, if things come to mind throughout while I'm talking, just enter those into the chat and we can get to those at the end. All right, so first things first, Windows 10 obsolescence. And so what we mean here is that Windows 10 is going into its end of support period. And so Microsoft, as they evolve forward with their operating systems, that they have to stop supporting their legacy operating systems. So Windows 11, even though I would say the majority of businesses, maybe there's a portion of them that have moved to 11, there's still a significant number of PCs out there, personal and business computers, that are still running Windows 10, even though Windows 11 has been out for about 4 years. So at the end of 2021 was when Microsoft first released Windows 11. And so naturally, as that new operating system ages, they look backwards at their legacy platforms and have to stop supporting updates and bug fixes to those as they evolve forward. And so what we're looking at here is a table that shows a number of different Windows 10 versions. And depending on the version, they have different end of support dates. And so if you go online and you Google Windows 10 end of support, that kind of the mainstream, most popular, highest number of users is Windows 10 Pro. And its final version, 22H2, came to its end of support date a couple weeks ago, so October 14th of this year. So if you have an earlier version of Windows 10, it's already been in kind of its completely obsolete phase. The other versions that I have listed here are Windows 10 IoT Enterprise, long-term servicing branch or servicing channel versions of software that inherently have longer support periods. It's one of the main benefits and reasons that these operating systems exist. And these are two versions that we've been shipping on our touch computers since 2017. And so there's a period of time when we were shipping the 2016 version or 1607. And its support date is actually continued through October of next year. So it's not quite in the phase that Windows 10 Pro is in. And similarly, since about 2020, we have been on those touch computers. We've been shipping the LTSC version of Windows 10 from 2019, version 1809, that is supported through January of 2029. So that just shows you kind of one of the reasons why we do use that operating system on those computers to try to help the longevity of support for the computers that we sell. But that's not common to every Instron supplied computer. So I'll get into that a little bit later as to figure out what version you have. But one way you can do that, or actually two ways, is if you go onto the computer itself and you go into settings, you can click on system and then the about page, that you will see some basic information about your PC. And included in that will be the Windows version. Alternatively, you can use Windows Run application, or you can press the Windows and then R key on your keyboard, and you can type in MS Info 32. And when you run that, it will actually pop up a much more detailed view of that computer's hardware and software version information for the operating system. So those are two ways you can quickly check on the computer locally. But why does this matter? Why should you guys care? Why are we talking about this? And it's really to try to avoid disruption to your Instron equipment and to just maximize your uptime. And to do that, that's why we're here recommending that our customers check their current systems and, if necessary, replace or upgrade to devices that support Windows 11. Because there's going to come a time when, if it hasn't come already, that your IT comes knocking to say, hey, for security reasons, for us to stay up to date on the latest Windows, we need to move your computers in your lab to Windows 11, and you don't want that to create downtime for your testing. So that's why we want to try to be as proactive as we can if you haven't already, and just plan what needs to happen to make sure you are on Windows 11 supported devices. So just right off the bat, I just wanted to make clear that when Windows 10 enters that end of support date, that it's not as if your system will stop working. The existing computer, the software controlling your machine, is going to continue to work beyond that Microsoft support end date. However, it will be at an increased risk, and that's for two reasons. So the first reason is that Microsoft themselves are no longer going to provide any updates if there are bugs that surface, if there's security risks, that there's no updates to those legacy versions. If you need technical support, you won't be able to get it through Microsoft. And then second, where it kind of comes in, where Instron comes into play, is that third-party software and hardware that's depending on that software is going to gradually lose compatibility with your legacy Windows version. And so that includes, of course, Instron software and hardware that could have software dependencies. So that's why if you look at today, it's 2025, that many of the systems that we're supporting and shipping today, we don't support Windows XP, Windows 7, or other legacy version of Windows, that we have to continue to develop on Windows' latest components and make changes to our software to support what Microsoft supports. And so over time, that now Windows 10 will join, say, Windows XP and Windows 7 gradually. So I figured that as we're talking about kind of the life cycle and obsolescence of Microsoft's operating system, that it was a good time to maybe educate some people around Instron's life cycle specific to software. So that's what we're looking at here. And what Instron does for our life cycle policy is we break things into 4 phases. And that is true for not just software, but also hardware. And those phases are, so it starts in phase 1. That's when the product is being produced, it's in production, it's fully supported, of course. Phase 2 is when that product is taken out of production, but is still fully supported by Instron. Phase 3, again, it's out of production, but that support level drops to a reasonable effort. And then phase 4 is our final phase, and that's when the product is discontinued, and support is very limited. And so the different types of support that I'm referring to, and this is kind of specific to software. And so you can go on our website and you can look at the lifecycle policy more generally that covers software and hardware online. But specific to software, if you need technical support, if something goes wrong within the software, if you need training, that you can see the different expected support you'll get depending on the phase that the application is in. Other services for calibration to verify your load cell or other transducers, that regardless of the phase, that we will perform calibration services. And then you get into updates. So for bug fixes or access to new features, minor version changes, and those updates, you can see support across the phases there. And then finally upgrades, where you're moving from one major version to the next. And again, kind of the support throughout. And so at the bottom of this screen, you can see all of our static software testing applications, and you'll note what's in phase 1, what we're currently developing, shipping, continuing to improve. And we don't have anything in phase 2 or 3 right now. And then you can see all of the legacy applications in phase 4. And so there's certainly a lot of our systems that are running phase 4 software. And every day there's people that are upgrading to Bluehill Universal or what have you. And you can kind of see in this bottom right hand corner that upgrades to the latest version, depending on what software you're running, are most likely going to be possible, but it's going to be limited by your machine's controller. So anything above a 5500 series controller, 5900, 3300, the current platform, 34 and 6800 is all fully supported by Universal. But if you have a very old piece of equipment, maybe that you acquired in the 80s or early 90s, that there's a chance that that machine would need to be replaced to actually run the current software. So that's just a little bit about our software lifecycle policy and just the support that you should expect on each application, in case you were not made aware of that. Okay, so that's Windows 10, and what do we have to know to be Windows 11 ready? So to know if you're ready, there's really 2 things that we need to check. The first is your Bluehill software version, and the second is the computer that you're using. And so I'm going to go through ways you can check this yourself, but certainly we have sales and service teams at the ready if you do need help. That we do have a program that's called Lab Health Check that is not just for software and operating systems, but also for all other pieces of your Instron equipment and hardware. And it's designed to let you know the status of that equipment, what phase it's in, what support you should expect, and where you should go if there's limited support, to better position your lab to maximize uptime. So if you want a lab health check, certainly reach out. You can request one online. You can request one from your local sales or service rep. But just to know that exists if you do have questions. So starting with the first check, so the software. So you can see in this table, we have listed our static software applications and the versions at which Instron has tested to fully support Windows 11. And so you can see basically everything since Windows 11, everything since December 2021, when Windows 11 was released, we've been able to test and confirm compatibility with Windows 11. So I would say most people probably tuning into the call are focused in on Bluehill Universal. And so if you have version 4.28 or greater, then that version has already been tested and fully supports Windows 11. If you have versions that are not listed here, or Bluehill 3 or Bluehill 2, Bluehill 1, those versions of software have not been tested by us. And you can attempt to install those applications on Windows 11, but we can't confirm whether or not it's supported. If there's any issues that arise, then you're going to be pointed to moving to a version that has been tested by us. So if you're not sure what version of software you have, of course you can ask us. But if you want to do this yourself, there's a couple ways to do it. So I'm showing two different ways for Bluehill Universal software, where number one, if on boot up, so if you start up the application before it transitions to the home screen, that you'll see the version displayed on the screen. Alternatively, if you are at the home screen, that you can select the frame or the system details icon in the top right of the screen, select system information, which will pop up a dialog with a handful of information about your software license, including the exact version of software that it is. So those are a couple ways you can check what version you have to see if we've tested it on Windows 11. So the second check is the PC, is the computer that is connected to your Instron machine. And so this table is showing computers that we, Instron, have supplied over the past 6 or 7 years or so. And it shows the model itself, when it actually left the building, when we shipped those models, and the version of the operating system that was shipped. So the first 3 rows are the computers that we're actively shipping. The first one is our touch computer. The next 2 are 2 different Dell, like traditional Dell PC towers. And you can see that if you received one of these computers since one of those dates, it was already shipped with Windows 11 software. If you go into the second part of the table with the orange, that these are, again, computers that we have supplied over certain periods. And over those periods, they were supplied with Windows 10. Although they were shipped with Windows 10, these computers shipped with these periods, so these models, they do support the transition, the move to Windows 11. However, that upgrade, acquiring the new image of Windows 11, if you want to update that specific unit, is something that needs to be performed by your IT team. If you don't see your computer listed here, then either you didn't purchase it from us, or if you did, then it's not going to support Windows 11, and you need to replace it when moving to Windows 11. And if you know that Instron didn't supply the computer, rather you supplied the computer yourselves, then you can, I presume that in many cases, your IT team probably configured that for you. So you can ask them about what their plan is for moving to Windows 11 and kind of the status of the computers, and they'll help you through that. If you want to do it yourself, you can also go online through Microsoft, and there's a free download of an application that's called the PC Health Check. And so you can run that locally on a computer, and it will tell you if that computer has the correct performance specs and chips to run Windows 11. So because people have been moving to Windows 11 over the last couple of years, that we've got quite a few questions. So I wanted to head off some of these, and maybe I can see that some questions are coming in. So we'll see if this answers any of them. But we have a few just frequently asked ones that I wanted to go through. So the first is, will Instron Service perform the upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11? So I've already mentioned this, but no, the answer is no. Instron Service will not upgrade your existing operating system on your computer. That your IT team is responsible for supplying that new Windows 11 image and performing the installation. And so Instron we have supplemental documentation that goes through that, some considerations during that process to ensure that your existing Bluehill files are protected during that process. If your IT team doesn't want to do this themselves, if they would prefer, that certainly there's always the alternative to request a replacement computer, a new PC that's shipped with Windows 11 from Instron, which would come along with kind of our service engineer coming on site to plug that in, set it up, install Bluehill, and perform any training that's necessary to get that up and running and as you need it. So the second question, which I sort of alluded to in the first, is how do I restore my Bluehill files and settings when reinstalling Bluehill? And so it's, of course, as you're using your equipment, you have a library of test methods that you depend on. You have all your historical sample files and data that you could already be storing this on a network location, so not on the local PC. So that would be great. Or you could be saving things entirely local to that computer. And so if you are saving things locally, you want to make a backup or make a copy of those on an external drive to make sure you have those saved to be able to restore once you reinstall. Because many times when you are reinstalling an operating system, it can wipe the files that you currently have, depending on what version of Windows you're running. So similar to test methods and your data, that there's Instron configuration files for all the settings of transducers and things that are stored locally on each machine's computer in a hidden folder, program data \Instron. And so if you want to just restore all of the transducer information and other settings when you do the reinstallation, then we certainly recommend copying this to an external drive, saving it somewhere that you can access. So upon reinstallation, you can move those files back to the original location to restore those existing files and settings. And so if this sounds like a couple of things is, we have the documentation that can walk you through many of these things and these reminders. And then we also have tech support that's always there for you to consult and kind of guide you through this process, or if you run into any hiccups. The next question is, how do I get the latest version of Bluehill Universal? So maybe you do the check and you see that you need to move to a newer version of Universal. So if you already have Bluehill Universal, if you already have a Universal license, then you can access the update and install it from Instron Connect. So whether it's the online portal or the Instron Connect application that's installed on your machine on its computer, that if you have an active Connect contract, you can just simply install it there. If you do not have a Connect contract, then our sales team can help you acquire that update that you need. And similarly, if you don't have Universal yet, if you're running legacy software, so say Bluehill 3, Bluehill 2, or anything earlier, that the upgrade from those legacy platforms can be purchased from our sales channel, and that can be kind of your local rep. You can also request that online, and you'll be forwarded to the appropriate sales contact. The last FAQ that I wanted to add involves the need to recalibrate or revalidate. So does your system need to be recalibrated or revalidated? So it's IQOQ per se, when you are upgrading to Windows 11. And so whether you're upgrading the operating system, you're replacing the computer, or if you're reinstalling Bluehill software, that those changes can raise a flag for some labs and their quality teams that they need to recalibrate or revalidate their Instron. So whether that's having Instron go on site to, again, confirm the performance of your load cell and your transducers with the change to the software, or if you need to have a reperformance of the IQOQ documentation to revalidate the behavior of the software and the system, that changing the computer, changing the software version can sometimes trigger that for some labs. So if that's the case for your lab, you can reach out to us to request that service. But that recalibration, that revalidation is not a requirement from Instron. It's really something that is dictated by your internal processes and quality policies. Okay, so that was Windows 10 obsolescence, how to prepare for Windows 11. And I just want to finish off with, I think 6 or 7 new features that I think a lot of people can benefit from. I just want to make sure people are aware of that we've introduced in the last few years. And the first is revision history. So revision history, it previously was part of our compliance package, which was an optionally purchased add-on to Bluehill Universal called Traceability. And revision history is essentially a change log that lives with every Bluehill file. So think about your methods, your samples, your report templates, that whenever someone makes a change or a new revision of that file, we're capturing who, what, and the when of that change. So who made the change, what did they actually change within the file, and of course the timestamp of when that happened. So you kind of have a nice picture of the life of that file, so that if anything were to happen, you can go back in time and see who made a modification, what they did, to see how that might have affected what you're currently trying to troubleshoot, or what you're looking into. And so that we took out of the traceability product and we put it into standard Bluehill Universal, because it's something that almost any lab, anyone using Universal, could find helpful. So we just want to make that widely available. So that was done on version 4.42. So maybe you already have a version that has it and you haven't been using it, but just something to be aware of. The second feature that I want to talk about is connectivity to Bluehill Central. And so in version 4.28, so it's been a few years now, that Universal, we added plugins to an application that's called Bluehill Central. And if you're not aware of what Bluehill Central is, I'll give you a little bit of an intro to it, and certainly check it out online. But it's a separate application that Instron develops, but it's basically a lab management tool that enables you to manage your Bluehill files, the test results, your users and their permissions and other settings, all from one centralized location, and you can do this remotely. And so owning Bluehill Central for your lab is its own license. It's an optional purchase. And any machine that's connecting to that centralized lab management tool, that centralized database, those plugins, again, are optional purchases within Universal, depending on what features you care about and you want to own. So it's not included with the latest versions. It's just an add-on that's available if you see value in it. And so the different capabilities that you can kind of look forward to if you're interested in Central. So if we look at the home screen, which is on the right-hand side of the screen, and start at the far left, the red role is called Lab Management. And currently that is basically our file repository. So if you're storing methods, your results, that any machine that's connected to Central's database, whether it's just in one lab or it could be multiple labs, different locations, that you're just going to see the same file system and have easy access to share those files without kind of the traditional approach of emailing them or moving them on a USB or what have you. So that's lab management. Traceability, the blue role, the second one is our compliance package, where if you need a full audit trail of your system activity to understand and prove for auditing purposes kind of the who's logging in, who's logging out, what their permissions are, who's making changes and approving changes to files, and you want to do that all in one place on any of your machines, you can do that through traceability. I will note that in addition to the audit trail, that you can set up approval workflows. So if you do have to make a change to a method, you can require a sign off for that change. Or if you do need someone to approve test results that are being generated, again, you can set up approvals for PDF reports and such. And this is something that's certainly available on our Bluehill Central platform to allow you to do all of this remotely and kind of in one place. But we do also have a traceability offering, that compliance solution available as a local offering, kind of isolated to each machine if that's more suitable for your lab. The third role is called Trend Tracker. It's our statistical process control, or SPC, kind of analysis tool that allows you to query multiple batches of test results all at once and to understand how how the behavior, the performance of your test results are changing over time. And so that's something that's certainly valuable if you need to do that type of analysis, because from Bluehill Universal, whenever you open up a sample at the machine in Universal, the only stats that you're looking at are associated to that single batch that you have open. So if you want to compare that batch to something you ran last week, last month, over the last couple of years, then that's where Trend Tracker comes into play and can certainly speed things up in terms of analysis. So many of our labs, they have their own tools and ways of doing this that they prefer. But if you don't have something like that available, then definitely check out Trend Tracker. And then settings, the kind of yellow or orange role. Regardless of what you care about on the first three, you're always you're gonna get settings. But I wanted to talk about it briefly because it's where you can, in one place, control all of your users that are interacting with your machines, what permissions they have. And Bluehill Central actually introduced a concept of a team to allow you to separate different groups of users, because you can share one central database across multiple labs, multiple pieces of equipment that are running Universal. And many times it's helpful to separate files and settings and different workflows across different teams. So that is what you can do within the settings role. All right, so the next feature, not a big one, a small one, but I think it's should be appreciated. That in version 4.42, we introduced this idea of promoting the calculation status to the results table. So if a result fails and you get those little dashes in the cell associated to that result, that you'll see an information icon that you can select, and it'll tell you exactly why we couldn't calculate that value. And so there could be many different reasons that a particular result have failed to calculate. So this just kind of cuts to the chase and tells you what went wrong. Previously, you could, on your results table, put a column that was called calculation status, and it would give you a number, and then you could look up that number in our help file to figure out that same information. But we've just made that much more user-friendly. So that's kind of a nice one to have. Another more recent change that we did this past June in version 4.52 is that on our 3400 systems specifically, that we introduced our automatic loop control setting for your gain of a strain transducer. So if your test application requires you to run in strain control, so whatever it is, 1%, 10% per minute, and you want to have closed loop feedback from the device itself, that's what our automatic loop control does. And in version 4.52 or higher on your 3400 system, that is now available for you to set up. Another small one, but nice one to know is last year in version 4.47, we enhanced our pass-fail workspace element to include mean and median statistic failure bounds for what we display as a pass or fail on your workspace, but also on your results table that you're exporting. And so what I have displayed here, kind of in the method, you can go to pass fail and you can say, hey, on my workspace element, I want to not only just see whether or not that one specimen has passed or failed, which is previously what was allowed, but you also can have just the sample or you can include both. So in this case, I have both displayed, where on the left-hand side, the sample itself and the median, or I guess in this case, the mean, the average value of those 5 specimens is actually passing the limits that were defined for that calculation. But specimen number 2 that we have selected actually failed it. So it's an additional layer of statistical analysis that's available. All right, last couple. So this one is again the middle of last year, version 4.47, that we have been offering our method suite. So every application type is available in our pre-configured ASTM ISO templates at no extra charge. And so when you do purchase an update or you get a new license of Universal, that we typically would ask, hey, what application are you testing to identify what version of templates we would ship with the machine to make available. But what we heard is that many times or sometimes labs would want 2 or 3 of the different applications for what we're intending to use the system for. And it just wasn't easy for us to supply that with how we sold it. So we said, hey, let's just include all modules, about 150 methods at no cost. You just got to remember to make that clear at the time of purchase for them to include it. And lastly is that July release last year, version 4.47, kind of the biggest changes that we made. And again, this is going to be pretty niche for people who are testing auto-injector devices. So not the everyday customer, but certainly if you are in that space, that there was a lot of work put in for these standardizing our auto-injector systems. And a lot of that work was done within our software, introducing new method types to make setting up the sequence of tests for those devices as simple as possible. And we made special methods to do that to make your life easier. So this is something that certainly requires the hardware to gain access to this part of Bluehill. But if you're not aware of it and you're in that space, you should definitely try to learn more about it on our website or through our sales team. Okay, so that is everything I had. and we can get into questions. But before we get into questions, the survey that we're going to include when you close out of the webinar. This session is a little bit different than traditionally what we do, where we just say, "Hey, how did Nick and I do?" That it's going to open up a survey that gets into a few different sections about how comfortable you are around test standard compliance and what you're testing to, and kind of your preferences around accessing upgrades for our software and some training preferences and gaps that we might have. And we would just really appreciate it if you could take the few minutes to kind of fill out what is applicable to you and what your opinions are, because we really need to make informed decisions, and that's largely based on what our customers think. And so we want to take this opportunity to push this survey out, and certainly we would greatly appreciate it if you could take it. But with that said, let's get to the Q&A. And I know I can see there's a lot of questions. There's 9 open questions that have come in. I'm going to try to read through these, and maybe some of them have already been answered. If I can't get to all of them, don't worry that in the next day or so, I'll reach out individually to people I can't get to, but let's try to spend 5 or 10 minutes going through some of these and see if I can answer them live. So the first open question is that we are on Windows 10 LTSC. Do we need Windows 11? Is there an LTSC license for Windows 11? When do we need a new computer for our Instron frame? Okay, so I think I answered this, but depending on the version of Windows 10 LTSC that you have, that you're still, regardless, you're going to be supported by Microsoft for at least another year. If you have the 2016 version, you got until next October. If you have the 2019 version, you'll have kind of updates through available and support from Microsoft through 2029, the January of 2029. So it's up to you for when you want to make the move to Windows 11 based on those dates that we do currently for our touch computers that we supply. We are currently supplying Windows 11 LTSC, which was just released last year, a few years into Microsoft selling Windows 11. So I think it's the 24H2, so 2024 second half version was their first LTSC version that we are currently shipping on our touch computers, and we have been for the last 4 or 5 months. Yeah, answers that. Second question, what does it mean in terms of upgrading from previous Bluehill Universal to latest version if our equipment is stuck on Windows 10 off the network? Will the latest Bluehill Universal work on Windows 10? Okay, so if you're off the network and you're stuck on Windows 11, Windows 10, then that's a decision that's made by your company to kind of disconnect the PC from the network. And if that's allowed by your IT, then you're not going to get any updates pushed. And you can continue to operate as is. Bluehill Universal does function on Windows 10. So the first however many years of its life, we were shipping Bluehill Universal on Windows 10. So we intend to continue to support Windows 10 for quite some time, but there will be a point where we no longer test Universal on Windows 10, and at that point in time, if you do update that computer, then we can't tell you whether or not that latest version will have any issues. So even if you are, like you said, go back to your original situation. You have your computer, it's running Windows 10, it's off the network, that you can decide to delay or you can decide to act. So you can either try to be proactive and get a version of software that you know works on your computer today, which would be Windows 10 and Windows 11 into the future, or you can decide to wait, and then ultimately when that computer, regardless of it being off network, you're going to be moving to Windows 11, then you're going to have to think about this at that time, and you might need to purchase an update at that time. So it's kind of up to you, but certainly buying Universal now on its latest version would be able to be installed on your off-network Windows 10. Next question, our Instron provided computer has gotten significantly slower this year. Would upgrading to Windows 11 help? That I cannot really say yes or no. So that is something that we would take pretty seriously. So I'd say it might be, depending on how you're saving and storing files on the computer or what other applications you have on the computer. So I would recommend for that individual to ask that question to reach out to our tech support team so that we can see, okay, how many files, what's your image look like from your storage? Is it within normal means, or are you already maxing out the space on that computer? And should you think about maybe storing files on a network rather than all locally? But I would not say that upgrading to Windows 11 is going to get rid of that issue. So I think that's a separate concern. I will note that we are continuously looking at the computers we're shipping, of course, with the operating systems and trying to keep those up to date and evolving on the versions that we're providing, but also with the specs of the PCs that we ship. We've done a number of RAM increases and a number of the solid state drive increases over the last few years. We have another one coming next month to double the storage space again, to try to have a product that continuously evolves our performance. Another question. Let me just see how many we have and then how much time we have left. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We have 11 questions. Nick, I think I'll just keep going until the hour is up and just see where we get, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, cool. So next question is, if I need to upgrade my computer to get the newer version of Bluehill that will work with Windows 11, do I need to purchase the newer version of Bluehill, or is it a free download? Okay, so that question is going to depend on a couple things. So if you, the primary thing is, if you have Instron Connect, which is our service contract that gives you a number of support tools, that if you have Instron Connect and you have Bluehill Universal, then all updates are included in that. They're free to download. Upgrades, however, are not included. So if you have Bluehill 3 and you have Instron Connect for its support purposes, that going to Bluehill Universal is not included. That's actually something we have a little bit of line of questioning around in that survey I was referring to. But so yeah, if you have Bluehill 3 or Legacy, you're always going to be purchasing an upgrade from sales. If you have Bluehill Universal and a Connect contract, then it's going to be free to you to access that download. And if you do not have Connect and you have Universal, then you're going to need to update through a purchase through our sales team. Another question, our Bluehill Universal rev level is 4.38, so that should be good with Windows 11. Yep, you're good. 4.28 or greater has been tested on Windows 11, so you can continue to use 4.38 on when you make the move to Windows 11. Next question, the calibration files would be included in the hidden files copied over from the program file Instron, correct? Yeah, so I guess it depends on what calculations you're referring to. So, sorry, what calibrations you are referring to. So if it's the kind of embedded transducer cal that's linked to a transducer, that basically when you open up say your load cell and it says the calibrate to do the electronic shunt calibration. That's the stuff, yes, that's the stuff that's stored locally in configuration files. If you're talking about like service calibration certificates, PDFs, none of that's stored automatically on the through Bluehill Universal in those folders. Maybe you are putting them somewhere, but I'm not really sure what calibration files you're talking about, so I can't answer that confidently. But typically what's stored in that program file, program data, Instron, is say your users, their permissions, your all that transducer information associated to your load cell and things, and other and extensometers, and all the different admin settings that your machine is depending on. That's that. Next question: is the reinstallation of Bluehill software mandatory when Windows is upgraded from 10 to 11? So that's a good question. I didn't answer that directly, and it's going to depend on your version of Windows. So if you're running a version of Windows where the upgrade from 10 to 11 is just an automatic thing that's available, which is something that can be available on, say, Windows 10 Pro operating systems, where you can run an upgrade yourself and it retains your applications and things, then the answer there is that no, you wouldn't need to reinstall Bluehill. But if the installation, if the transition from Windows 10 to 11, rather than just a simple clean update, is essentially a re-imaging of the operating system, where you are wiping the old operating system off of the computer and then reinstalling a new operating system, which is a second way upgrades occur. Then in that's the case where you're going to have to reinstall Bluehill software, and you have to be careful about where you're storing your files, so to back them up to be able to restore them. The one thing I'll add to that is the one kind of downside to LTSC, the long-term servicing channel versions of Windows, is that the clean, just very simple update from one version to the next, from 10 to 11, is not possible on LTSC builds. So every transition off of LTSC to another platform, from Windows 10 LTSC to Windows 11 Pro or Windows 11 LTSC, either one, is a full wipe of that operating system and reinstallation. Okay. Another question is around maybe a feature I missed. So someone had heard, and I can clarify this. So don't the latest versions of Bluehill include advanced performance for our high tier frames, the 5900s and now the current 6800s? And so the answer to that is yes. And so to add a little bit more color to that question, that again, the middle of last year or so, around the same time that we included the method suite and no extra charge, that there used to be an add-on to Universal licenses for our premier systems, the 5900s and now the 6800s, that was called Advanced Performance. And essentially what that did was it unlocked a higher data capture rate. So instead of 2500 hertz, you could capture data up to 5000 hertz. And so, yes, the person answering this question or asking that question is correct, that now regardless, there's no option. Any premier system of 5900 or 6800 system that ships our latest software is automatically given like the full range of data capture. So that is correct. All right, we got 4 minutes. We'll see what I can do. All right, we have a question. I've been doing cyclic compression tests and noticed that in Bluehill 2, version preset points on both loading and unloading of each cycle can be calculated. And Universal does not have this feature in the calculation. Can you verify and let me know where I can find it? So cyclic tests, getting preset points on loading and unloading. I'm just going to not go out on a limb, and I'm just going to tell this person that I'll follow up with you in the next day or so, and let you know what the replacement calculation is, or if we had removed it for whatever reason. So I'll follow up offline for that one. Next question: is there a cost to update the software to support Windows 11? So I've answered that before. So hopefully you heard that. Are methods created in an earlier version of Bluehill compatible with the latest version? Another good question that I didn't get into, but the answer is yes. So if you are updating or upgrading your software, whether you're moving from a legacy, say Bluehill 2, Bluehill 3, or you're moving from an earlier version of Universal, and you open that up on the latest version of Bluehill Universal, then you can do that. It's compatible. That if there happens to be a change between the two versions, then the user will receive a message that says this has been changed for this reason. And so if that is the case, so kind of the further you go back, the older the method is, there might be some changes. And then we just kind of communicate what those changes are to the user when they open it in the latest software. Also, revision history, that if we're making changes, that everything that's changed is going to pop up into that change log, which is obviously a great thing to rely on. Another question, just to clarify, once I get a new computer with Windows 11, a copy paste can be done to reinstall Bluehill onto the new computer. Okay, yeah, I'll get a little bit more color onto this. So you have a new computer with Windows 11. That new computer does not know what Bluehill is. It doesn't have it installed. So what that means is that the installation files that you were originally provided with the machine, so the USB media stick that has the setup.exe file to install the Bluehill Universal application, or if you go to our Instron Connect portal to download the latest version of Bluehill. Either way, what you're doing on that new computer is you are reinstalling Bluehill. So you have to kind of open up you have to run that setup.exe, run through the installation wizard, which is if you need assistance. It's quite simple, but if you need assistance, you can certainly request assistance from our technical support team. We can give you documentation around what that looks like, what the screens you should expect are. But it's just a 2 or 3 minute install that will then install the Bluehill Universal application onto that computer. You'll be plugging in your key code information and such. And so that's the process for reinstalling Bluehill onto a new computer. All right, I've done as many as I could. We're right at the top of the hour, so I'm going to just stop there. And then there's a few questions left. I'll reach out to you individually in the next couple days.
All right. Nice job there. That was I didn't expect so many questions. I should have. I mean, this topic definitely warrants it. But yeah. Nice job there. So just to wrap up, again, if any questions come in between now and when we end this, I'm going to get those over to Dan. All the questions will go over to Dan, and he'll figure out which ones, need to get answered. And I've seen a number of questions come over, like slides, recording. Can we share those? Yes. Those will come over in an email, probably in the next day or so. So you can, share those with anyone that you need to kind of share this information with. Also, if you'd like to explore more content, I know this one was very specific to, transitioning from, Windows operating systems, that kind of thing. But Bluehill features in general, other testing topics, I'd really encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. Dan and a number of the other people on the team have done a fantastic job of creating a lot of feature specific videos, YouTube lives focused on Bluehill Universal, Bluehill Central, these types of things. So I really encourage you to do that. I think there's just like a wealth of information there that anyone can benefit from. I'm actually going to drop a link into the chat where you can check that out. And then again, as Dan mentioned, as soon as this webinar ends, that survey he was talking about is going to appear on your screen. We'd really appreciate your thoughts on that. So with that said, thanks to Dan for presenting today. Great job. And thanks to everyone for attending. Really appreciate you joining us. Take care, everybody.